Hi, my name is Todd Leonard.
And my name is Herb Montgomery, and we're just talking.
Thank you for taking a moment to click our like button, our subscribe button, and our bell icon button. We appreciate those clicks very much.
So, if you're new to this channel, each week Todd and I take a moment to talk about the upcoming weekend's lectionary reading from the Gospels. And our goal is to talk about those readings in the context of love and inclusion and social justice. Our hope is that our conversation, our talking, will be just talking, as in justice, but that also something will be said during this time as we go back and forth that'll inspire you along with us to do more in our justice work than just talking. So, Todd, last week we hinted at the end that we had a special announcement to make. Um, you got any announcements to make this week?
No, not at all. We were just making that up. Yes, I do have an announcement on behalf of us. We have chosen to bring this broadcast to a close next week. And that has to do primarily with me. It's my fault that we're making that decision. I'm entering into a season of life where I will be, to make a long story short, almost working two full-time jobs for the next year, and just do not have the time to pull this together myself. And so Herb has graciously agreed that we should probably bring this to a close, and
We
so
almost made
we
it through the lectionary, Todd.
we
Two and
did
a half years. We almost cycled through the lectionary.
we did, and honestly wish we could have made it through the whole lectionary and have that as just something to stand, because we'll leave these episodes up on YouTube, so they can be referred back to if anybody's interested. When you come up to the lectionary reading from week to week, you can find it in the titles of our broadcasts. Give the lectionary year and season and week every title, so you can find that. It would have been nice to fill out the whole lectionary cycle, but
Maybe,
we didn't
maybe
quite
like
make it.
5 or 6 years from now, we'll return and finish out those last 6 months
Maybe,
when we
perhaps,
cycle back around 3 years from now.
perhaps, or maybe AI will finish it for us.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Yeah.
Um, but anyway, we've thoroughly enjoyed. Herb and I have thoroughly enjoyed doing this study from week to week, and have appreciated you joining us for it. And we treasure this experience with you, and grateful that you've been along for the ride.
Very much so. Very much so. So, without further ado, Todd, what passage are we looking at this week?
Well, Herb, we are in Luke chapter 12, verses 32 through 40. So, kind of picking up from, in a way, we were in Luke 12 last week, and we're
That's right.
continuing in Luke 12 this week.
We didn't get very far. We're only just the next few verses. And this again, I said this last week, but I'll say it again this week. I really like Luke 12. Luke 12 is one of my, if not my favorite chapter in the Gospel of Luke, because I feel like we really get a clear view of what Jesus's economic teachings were with the gospel, with the gospel of the kingdom. What are kingdom economics? What are what is the economic justice he was reaching for? And this week continues right along in that thread. Don't be afraid, little flock. It is the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. We're moving into community now. We're moving into this community where God reigns. And therefore, his next sentence says, sell your possessions and give them to the poor. I remember one time someone said, well, Herb, that's just what Jesus said to that one guy That was a special, just a special, a unique,
Hmm.
a focused message to that one person. But here in Luke 12, it's not. It's for the whole crowd. Sell your superfluous, belongings and give it to the poor. Last week we were talking about how in our present economic system, it's a zero sum game. If you have more than what you need, that's come from somebody, and maybe
Yeah.
not directly, but and it may be very indirectly, but indirectly, someone is going without what they need if you have more than what
Right.
you need, right? And so Jesus's corrective for that is if you have more than what you need to survive, don't build bigger barns like we were talking about last week. If you have more than what you need, sell it and give that to those from whom it was taken away from in the first place. Restore it to those who are the losers at the Monopoly game. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I'm not saying that people that struggle with poverty are losers. I mean, in the context of a Monopoly game,
Right.
those who are on the losing side from whom it has been taken away from. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, and that's challenging for us today. I was having a conversation with a group last night, trying to figure out, well, how do you determine how much is more than what you need?
Yeah.
And I think you've mentioned maybe even last week, Todd, about that threshold of happiness, that up
Yes.
until that, your needs are met, money has a direct relationship to your happiness because your needs are
Hmm.
not being met. But once your
Hmm.
needs are met, more money on top of that doesn't necessarily increase your happiness the way it did
Correct.
under that.
Yeah, there's a direct reduction in increase of happiness after a certain point. It just starts plateauing after that point, and that's right. There's so at some point, and different economists have tried to pinpoint that figure based upon the state and city of the United States where you live. They've tried to say, all right, this is where somebody is just eking out a mere existence. And then this is the level where they say like a family of four can afford to purchase a home
Mm-hmm.
and have transportation access and have their basic needs all met, and they're not going into debt. And so there's been people who've attempted to name that figure, and it's going up. I mean, I think that number for my state of Louisiana, um, I think is somewhere in the upper 90s, low 100s for a
Mm-hmm.
family of four to make ends meet, um, and have resources available without going into debt. Um, and so saying, yeah, how Jesus is saying those, if he was preaching to the state of Louisiana, he would be saying, we need to get the people who are not at
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
threshold.
Up
That's
to
where
that
we need to
threshold.
get you. That's where we need to get them so that the society can function effectively, and
And
everyone has
those
at
that are
least.
the farthest on the other side of that threshold are the ones that he called upon to give the most
Yes.
to catch the others up.
And often those who are on the other side, on the wealthy side, are also in charge of the corporations and the business infrastructure that has often been tailor made to respond to the stock market and its
Mm-hmm.
effect upon the wealthy people who own the stocks, and not at the laborers within the corporations needs. It's been beholden to the stock market. And so at the same time as he's saying you need to adjust not just what's coming out of your own pocket, or you can give back a significant chunk of what you've brought into your own personal wealth, but your corporation needs to see a fundamental change of operation. And I would suggest that government regulations around corporate wealth distribution would be revisited as well for all those things to happen.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the question of how can a CEO make $1 billion in a year and most of their employees not have health benefits
Healthcare.
or retirement, you know what I mean? Those types of
Yep.
things. How can you and I appreciate those municipalities, those cities where there is some type of regulation on how big the disparity can be between your highest
Hmm.
paid employee and your lowest paid employee. You know what I mean? Where there's an
A
attempt there
cap.
to
Yeah.
regulate that. Yeah, yeah. So in our passage this week, right after he says that, the encouragement is to make purses for yourself that don't wear out, unfailing treasure in heaven, where no thief comes near, no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Just like what we talked about last week. This week's passage and last week's passage, it's in the same context. They're just continuing through. So it's very related in subject matter. But we were talking about last week about how being rich towards God meant being rich towards people
Mm.
and laying up your treasure in a way that thieves can't get to and rust it can't rust and no moths destroy and all that. He's talking about community, that when
Yes.
I share more than from my surplus, from my superfluous, from the more than what I need, when I share that with people who don't have their needs met, what we're supposed to be doing in that act is creating a community where we're committed to taking care of one another. And
Mm.
instead of my hope for the future being that I've hoarded all of this wealth so that no
Hmm.
matter what happens, I'll be able to weather it. I mean, in
Right.
James it says, "Tell the wealthy not to put their trust in wealth," right?
Mm.
But to put their trust in God, who gives us all things for our pleasure. And so, what does he mean by that? We're creating a community. We're not. There's two ways to guard against bad things that may come our way in the future. One is to hoard and to hoard and to hoard and say, if I can just hoard enough, I can weather whatever comes. The
Mm.
other is to create a community where we have each other's back. And I'm helping somebody today
Mm.
whose rough time has come today, and in so doing, I'm building that community where there will be someone in that community where in the future, if I hit on rough times, I'll have that
Mhm.
community to fall back on that'll take care of me.
Mm.
And it's this reciprocal give and take where we're creating community. And I remember I was preaching on Luke 12 once at a church, and someone came up to me and said, "Well, Herb, does that mean I need to get rid of my retirement plan?" And I said, "No. In the system that we're living in right now,
Right.
your retirement plan is not superfluous. Your
Right.
retirement plan is necessary because we don't live in a system where we live in a system that's very individualistic, that's very pushes self-reliance and self-sufficiency, and we're not
Hmm.
dependent on anyone else. We're not taking care of one another. We're making sure we take care of ourselves, right?"
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so I don't the response to this passage is not necessarily to go put yourself in dire straits.
No.
The response to this passage is to start building a community with the hopes that one day that community will make your retirement account no longer needed, your retirement account
Right.
obsolete. All of those
Right.
things that we've created to take care of ourselves individualistically become obsolete because we've created a community where these principles are being applied in a fair and just way.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's well said because I can tell you I have family members right now who are having to uh, get um, significant health care provided to them in their elderly years
Mm-hmm.
because of illness, and they're only able to have quality care for themselves because they had set aside resources for long-term care insurance
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
to have reserves to pay for living in specialized facilities who can provide the health care that they need. Um,
So
because our system does not make sure that is provided for everybody.
right,
We have
right.
to. It is our responsibility. We have to take that upon ourselves. So that's
That's a great
it's
example,
not
Todd.
wrong, but that's showing where the community has failed,
Yes.
where the
And I
society has
use the word
failed.
community, but I think I would rather, because community sounds like you're trying to create this small little group where you're taking care of one another. Well,
Right.
let's transition out of that model to no, we're not talking about community on a small scale. We're talking about community on a large scale. We're talking about society
Hmm.
where maybe my tax money, my taxpayer money can go to make sure everybody has universal health care.
Right.
Like if there was such a thing as universal health care, those things that your family members have invested in would be obsolete.
Yes. That's right.
Let's create societal systems where the elderly are taken care of, where the poor where poverty is eradicated, where healthcare is universal, those types of things, where everyone has job access, those types of things.
We could solve a number of those issues if we just reduced our military spending to only spending three times the amount of the
Of
next
everybody else,
nation,
right?
if instead of seven times what we're
Right,
doing now, we
right.
could we could push our elected officials to reallocate uh, the the budget, and rather than cutting what we did in this big beautiful bill, cut necessary services to the poor, we could actually cut funding to services that we have too much of already,
Mm-hmm.
and doing that. So yeah, so
So
that's where we're thinking.
selling your possessions and giving alms sounds like it does. It sounds like, me selling a house and then giving that away as charity. But I would argue that what's really being talked about here is changing our system to those whom the present system gives more than what they need. And there are people that don't have. What
Hmm.
he's saying is there needs to be a system change where maybe
Hmm.
those that are making the most, I'm talking about billionaires, maybe they experience a little bit more taxation where their
Hmm.
possessions are, lessened so that
Hmm.
that money can go back into a system where we have things like universal health care.
Hmm.
I mean, that would be in perfect harmony with this passage.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're I just read an article beginning of this week where about half of U.S. children are living at or below the poverty line.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's that should, like the article that Herb referenced last week about the U.S. destroying what they believe is superfluous food supply because it messed up the market. That was an evil act. The fact that we have almost half our children who are living
At or below.
hovering at or below the poverty line is speaks to our askew priorities and
Mm-hmm.
lack of fundamental uh, obedience to anything related to what Jesus is teaching.
So one of my favorite authors is Wendell Berry. And
Hmm.
in his writing, The Two Economies, he said, we may say then that we seek the kingdom of God in part by our economic behavior, and we fail to find it if that behavior is wrong.
Hmm.
That's exactly what you're describing right
Hmm.
here. And rather
Hmm.
than, I've been using the word community, but I think I want to transition into using the word society. When he was preaching the kingdom, he was talking about a society where God reigns. And in that society, it wasn't about being religious. It was mostly about being economically just. And,
Hmm.
and, and that's why he could say, blessed are the poor, for theirs is the
Hmm.
kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are those who are hungry, because those who are mourning over the present situation, those who are hungry, those that are poor, those that, are whom the present system disadvantages, this society belongs to you, because in this society that Jesus is envisioning, in this society, the poor are taken care of, the hungry are fed.
Hmm.
That's why it belongs to them. They're the ones that are the biggest recipients of the
Yeah.
blessings of the kingdom.
Yep. Yeah. This is pure economic.
It really
Uh,
is.
it's pure.
It's
There's
pure economic
nothing.
good news.
This isn't
If
a
you're poor,
spiritual.
if you're
That's
poor,
right. That's right.
if you're
That's
someone who's wealthy, you look at this and you walk away, you know, despondent, as Mark says, because you had great
right.
possessions,
Yep.
and it's hard for you to enter into the kingdom. It makes
Yeah.
perfect sense when you put it in, when you frame it back in economics,
Yes.
that Jesus' kingdom was about building a just human society, not about getting to heaven.
Hmm. Which this is for some reason this passage and conversation, it rings a bell for me about that verse of Jesus where he says, "Where two or three are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of them." And I think about the community that he's trying to form, and when you're talking about a community that's gathered for his purposes, gathered for kingdom
Mm,
purposes,
mm.
that's where God dwells with people.
Not
And
talking about
and
church.
it's not church.
We're
It's
talking
not
about a
about having a
society where
prayer
we're
meeting.
committed to take care of each other.
Right. I've always heard it used as a justify that, hey, we're going to have a prayer meeting, and if two or three people get together, God's there. No, it,
Right.
it it has to do with God is dwelling amongst people who are about doing His will and doing this work that we're talking about here in Luke 12.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. And we're not being far-fetched here, because the early church in the book of Acts did exactly
That's right.
what we're describing here tonight. They couldn't do it societally, but they at least did it on a small scale communally. And it says in Luke 4 that from time to time, those who owned land or houses sold them, brought the money from the sales, and put it at the apostles' feet. And it was distributed to anyone who had need. And the result was there were no needy persons among
Mhm.
them.
And yeah,
Poverty
that's the
was
thing.
eliminated.
If you're unclear, if you think that maybe as our series wraps up soon, that well maybe the theologians that Herb has brought to us, and the conversations that Herb and Todd have had, maybe that isn't the gospel. Maybe that isn't what Jesus really prioritized. All you have to do is look at what the people did immediately following the ministry of Jesus. What did the people do right after? What was the first thing that they prioritized? It was they brought possessions together. They made sure everybody was taken care of.
They were doing exactly what we're reading about in Luke 12. What we're
Right.
reading in Luke 12, in Acts 2 and Acts 4, they take seriously, and they attempt to pull it off.
It doesn't talk about it does eventually Acts talks about them going out and telling other people about Jesus,
Yes.
but
The
the
very
first
first thing
thing
they
you
did.
see is they establish the community. And my argument would be is as they're going to proclaim Jesus to other places, their intention is to see that type of community set up everywhere they go.
I like it. I like it. I like it.
So,
So
all
let's
right.
talk
So
about
we
the
got more
last
of
half of
yeah,
this. Yes, because
yeah.
the last half is a little problematic. The first thing I do want to name, and there's no solution for it, it just is what it is, and it's horrible, is that it normalizes slavery here.
Mm-hmm.
And this was one of those passages, one of those examples in the New Testament where those Christians who were against the abolition of slavery, they could point to a passage like this one this week, if not this one itself, and say, see, the Bible talks about slavery, and does so in a way where slavery is not condemned. And here's Jesus giving a parable about being a good slave and being alert for when the
Mm-hmm.
master returns. And that's
Mm-hmm.
problematic.
It is.
There's no solution for that. I mean, the point of the parable is to be alert, to be in our vernacular today, to be woke, to be awake, to not
Mm,
be caught
mhm,
sleeping, right? To
mhm,
be conscious and aware of the injustices taking place around you and the works of justice that are going on, because you never know when the master is going to return. And there's that problematic language. But
mhm,
the context, too, is that in the Hebrew prophetic justice tradition, they believed that God had given them over to Gentile oppressive empires
mm,
because of their failure to practice justice among themselves as a society. The
mm,
way, I mean, read the book of Amos, read Jeremiah, read
mhm,
Isaiah,
mhm,
all of these, their failure to take care of the vulnerable, the widows, the poor, the foreigners, their treatment of the foreigners. Let me repeat that. Their treatment of the foreigners.
yeah.
They believed they had been abandoned because of their practices in these areas. And what their hope was that the master would come back,
Mm,
that God would return to his people and
mm,
liberate them and restore them, right?
mm,
But it was all rooted in their return to the practice of societal justice.
mm,
And here you have the parable saying, don't give up. It may look hopeless. I know Rome just
mhm,
destroyed Jerusalem. Don't give up. It may look hopeless. Blessed are those who are still awake and alert when he
mm,
returns. And
mm.
it's not talking about a second coming per se. You know what I mean? The way that Christians talk
Right.
about a second coming, it's talking about the return of the covenantal God to his
Yeah.
people.
A restoration of things,
Yes.
a restoration reconciliation type of work.
Yes. And then there's this juxtaposition that you and I were talking about before we started our show tonight, um, kind of problematic, where it says, but if the owner of the house had not known what hour the thief was coming, he would not have let his house be broken into. You must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an unexpected hour. My theory, and I'm just guessing here, but my theory is that he's explaining why it has to happen, why we have to be alert, why it has to happen unexpectedly, because the owner of the house, remember, was the Roman Empire primarily, and the way that it had co opted the temple state and the
Mm,
society that Jesus belonged to. And the thief was coming. And who is that thief that's going to break into the empire? It's the breaking into the kingdom. It's the Son of Man. And that's from the apocalyptic book of Daniel, in Daniel chapter 7, where
mhm,
the Son of Man is the conduit. He's the active change agent that liberates God's people from these oppressive
mm,
Gentile empires. And remember,
mhm.
this is right in the wake of Rome having come in and leveled the temple
Right.
in
Right.
Jerusalem, right? And so there's every reason in the world for them to give up hope. And the Gospel of Luke is telling them just to hang in there, just to hang on,
Mhm,
keep hoping,
mhm.
keep striving for a society of justice.
Yeah. So I just to clarify, Herb, what you're saying, we're looking at verses 37 and 38, which talks about, or I'm sorry, 36, 37, and 38, which is talking about the master returning to the home as as as
Just
kind of
being just being alert and awake.
being alert and awake, waiting for God to do the work of restoration.
The
And
covenantal God,
then
yes.
verses 39 and 40 is
Kind of
talking
switches
about,
track.
it switches and talks about be ready for Jesus to step in, or be ready
Son of
for
Man.
the Son of Man, for the work, for God's servants to step in and do the work of overthrowing the enemy, of overthrowing the oppressor.
Yeah, I mean, in Daniel 7, it's not so much the people as the Son of Man who does it on behalf of, it says in
Hmm.
Daniel 7, the people,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So I don't know that he's asking for their participation here. I would say participation is that's half the problem, is where most Christians, certain Christians, are waiting around for God to do something for them when
Hmm.
God's wanting to cooperate with their efforts, right? But
Hmm.
but but in this context, I think he's just explaining why it has to be unexpected, why it has to be by surprise, because we're
Hmm.
taking down empire.
Mm-hmm.
This new society will be a threat to the empire.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we
Mm-hmm.
know that? Well, because the founder of that society, even himself, ended up on a Roman cross because he was seen as a threat to the empire.
Right.
So I think that in this last part, he's explaining,
Mm-hmm.
if the owner of the house, being Rome, had known what hour the thief, the Son of Man, was coming, he would not have let his house be broken into. You also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an unexpected hour. When you put that in the context of having just watched Rome destroy Jerusalem, I think he's trying to give them hope.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think the author of Luke is just trying to inspire the community to keep believing,
Mm-hmm.
to journey, to don't stop believing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I, as a Journey fan, I appreciate that reference. Thank you.
That's what I think's happening with these last two stories. Again, the language is problematic, but I think he's just telling them still keep striving for justice. Don't give
Yeah.
up hope.
Yeah, I think this is good. I mean, again, you look at how Matthew collates sayings of Jesus, how Mark collates sayings of Jesus. Luke is collating sayings of Jesus to work to make his point. And I think what you're getting at, the thrust of this passage is devote yourself to kingdom economics, keep working at it, and keep watching for God to move this work forward and accomplish his purposes in the world.
Yeah. And I think that's especially appropriate right now because the choice to continue working for justice is not always easy. And again, right now, especially when we're witnessing uh, so many around us that are caving in
Mm-hmm.
to or bowing the knee rather even to
Mm-hmm.
just to be expedient, just to be um,
Mm-hmm.
all of this pressure, choosing justice. I mean, it was true for them back then. I think it's true for us right now. It may cost us comfort. It may cost us popularity. Um, it'll definitely cost us some of our privilege, those of us who live in a privileged social location.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think it's what Jesus is inviting us into this week to participate with him in that shaping of a world that is safe, just, compassionate, a safe home for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And especially right now, and I want to keep circling back to that. It can be really hard when you don't see very many reasons to keep hoping.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean. And when
Yeah.
those who are standing up for what's right seem to every day get fewer and fewer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's the context of these last two stories. Continue being alert, continue
Yeah.
being woke, and continue to know that be alert, be ready. It still could be right around the corner,
Yeah.
and that's a hard sell.
Yeah.
That's a hard sell.
It is. Well, you have that passage in Matthew 24 where it talks about the 10 virgins waiting for the Son of Man to show up and to bring everybody into the celebration banquet,
Right.
and and
And
there.
again, Son of Man returning today has been so Christianized that we immediately think of, if you were raised in faith traditions like mine, we immediately think of second coming of Jesus.
Yeah.
But the return of the Son of Man back then, the coming of the Son of Man back then, if you look at the only place where that language is used, it's Daniel chapter
Mm-hmm.
7. It was not about the second coming. It was about the liberation
Right.
from the oppressed, from the oppressor, the end of all violence, the end of all injustice on earth.
Right. In fact, you would say it would be. I think it'd be an interesting word study to go back and look where different people over the course of the Hebrew scriptures, where God refers to them as His Son or His chosen,
Mm-hmm.
representing that Son of Man figure. That there have been a number of Son of Man figures that, or God's chosen, maybe not Son of Man specifically, but God's Son has been a chosen instrument to bring about God's justice and liberation to his people. You
Yeah.
see that with Moses, you see that with Nehemiah, you see that with Zerubbabel, you see that with some of these people. And you see Jesus, when Jesus is baptized, this is my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased. Um, that he's that God is about liberation. But I think to go back to that parable of the 10 virgins, you have people who say, no matter what, I'm going to be ready. Even if I lose my wokeness for a minute, I'm going to be ready for the Son of Man to show up. And you have five others who are you know are in it not for the long haul. And I think there's this, like you said, Luke here and Matthew and his passage, in that passage, and others are saying it may seem like it's taken a while. It may seem like it's taking longer than necessary. Don't give up. Do not give up. Keep holding on and
Angela
keep doing the
Davis used to
work.
say that our work is not the work of hours or months or even years or even lifetimes. It is the work of generations.
Mm-hmm.
And others have spoken about, we're planting trees that others will, sit under the shade of. This is the work of justice that we're called to. And in moments like this, it can be challenging, it can be difficult. But we're called to keep at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anything else?
And that's what I've got this week, Todd. Those are my thoughts on this week's passage.
Okay. All right. Well, then give us an update on Renewed Heart Ministries.
Yeah, if you're unfamiliar with Renewed Heart Ministries, you can check us out at renewedheartministries.com. We are a ministry that is passionate about helping people explore and encounter the intersection of their faith and whatever area of social justice they feel passionate about. All of our resources there are free. Again, you can check those out at renewedheartministries.com. And a special thank you out there to all of our supporters. If you would like to join them in supporting Renewed Heart Ministries, you can do that by also going to renewedheartministries.com and just clicking donate. What's going on with you, Todd?
Yeah, I continue to be developing my counseling abilities, and that's really the reason why this show is coming to a conclusion, is because I'll be beginning to do my internship work around that. So um, as I am continuing to that learning process myself, I am available in a coaching context to serve those of you, especially with spiritual, existential questions, religious trauma issues, LGBTQ identity discussions, clergy, transition issues, those type of things. I'm here to help, and happy to talk with you. And you can find out more about that at tjlcc.com.
Thanks, Todd.
All
All
right,
right,
everybody.
everyone. Yeah, thanks for watching this week. Thanks, Todd, for hanging out again. And remember, tune in next week for our final show.
Maybe we'll have some special effects.
Do you have special effects you can add to this?
I don't know. Let's see. Let me try something right here.
Post production, Todd's going to add special effects.
Oh, I just put a
Oh,
heart up on my screen. Look at that.
dude, that's
See, we
special.
might have
That
something like
that may be the extent of our special effects right there. Thanks, Todd. Thanks. Appreciate your contribution.
My pleasure. It's exciting. It's exciting. All right.
All
All
right,
right, everybody.
everyone. We'll see you next week.